Welcome back to our final episode of downloadable content on this free play. As we know, we've lost a Gabe and we have lost a Ron. We have gained a Ryan.
A lot of R's in here.
Yeah, it's a very alliterative episode. Especially when you have episodes that are just Ron, Ronnie, and Ryan, just rolls right off the tongue in the intro. It's just like, all right,
really.
Oh yes,
really.
We voted to get rid of the B at the beginning of Brian's name.
You could be Ryan.
So it would be Ryan, Ron, and Ron. Oh Jesus,
it would be great.
It would absolutely.
I could be Ron for this.
It would absolutely be. It's like, but since we have Ron and Ronnie, sometimes my brain wants to correct it to Roddy, and then it's just like, no, not him. Now, and appearing, it's Ronnie. You're the next contestant on downloadable content.
Would that be your way of leading into the topic?
You look at what you could win. You could play Plinko for $50,000.
So.
50,000 pesos.
50,000 pesos. All right, yeah. Ronnie is going to start.
50,000 lira.
Going into my topic. So originally, my topic was going to be the best moments of DL content in everybody's eye. Like, what was your favorite thing from being on the show? But then my father passed away, and I didn't have a chance to go through and listen to the old ones that I wanted to go through to pick out ideas. So I completely changed my idea over the course of today.
Shit, it's due tomorrow. What do I do?
Oh crap! I gotta
do it live.
Yep.
At least I had a pretty good excuse.
Yes, you did.
So instead, I wanted to. It actually inspired by me getting back into listening to some stuff yesterday. I wanted to talk a little bit about video game music. Specifically, I wanted to talk about good modern video game music.
Ooh.
Because it's real easy for us all to talk about how awesome the Mega Man 2 theme is, or how good Chrono Trigger's music is, or how every single song in Final Fantasy VI is the best song of all time.
Where's your cutoff for modern? Where's the line?
I suppose I would probably cut off at the PS2. Because I think PS1 at this point is classic. But I wouldn't argue if somebody just wanted to go CD systems onward with the PlayStation.
Yeah,
your topic. You get to pick where...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to leave it up to you guys what you consider modern for your own.
I agree with you. PS2
okay.
onwards.
I'll end with what my personal favorite ones are, but do you guys have any ideas on what's some great modern video game music?
I'll give you 3 off the top of my head, and then just move on. I don't want to go on forever, especially since I just had my piece. But Xenoblade Chronicles is a gigantic one for me. That was on the Wii and the 3DS, and I guess it's on the Switch now.
I picked that up on the Switch, but I have not played any version yet, so I'm glad to know that.
The soundtrack is
excellent soundtrack. No, he is. I will happily agree with John on this one. It's an amazing soundtrack. I really enjoyed it.
Without spoilers, you're going to get to a place called Satorl Marsh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before you go in that place, set it to daytime, so that you're walking around with the boring-ass daytime music. And then when it turns nighttime, you will be blown away.
I will remember that.
It's an experience. So that's one. Castlevania, the Lords of Shadows trilogy had amazing work.
That I agree with.
And I want to go a little weird for the third choice, maybe. Gibbs, stop. Sorry, my dog is being a bitch.
Your dog has opinions.
I thought that was the name I had heard of.
He had a lot of opinions in the first half, and we had a little discussion, and he needs to calm his ass down. But I did want to go a little weird. I'm going to go with an indie game, Celeste. Celeste soundtrack was first of all, Celeste was just a very moving game in general, but like there were some, and I got lost in this game, and that's a pixel game, and I got lost in it because of the soundtrack. So those are like my top three.
Celeste is such a beautiful game, both visually and audioly. Yes, thank you.
That's a new word that we invented today.
Absolutely, it is.
Auditorily.
That means it's a real word now. But it is such a beautiful game, and part of the beauty in the game is how they did so much with so little.
Yeah, and like just going to the soundtrack. Like, I don't want to talk about the specific moment, but there's a boss battle near the end of the game that has like one of my new favorite video game songs of all time, just because of how stressed out it made me while I was going through that. It made the game harder because.
Could you put the name of the boss in the chat? Because I'm kind of curious about which one you mean.
The dog boss.
The dog boss, the goodest of boys.
I put the name in there, but it's right at the end pretty much. And that part, I was just like, oh my god, this music is gonna give me a heart attack, in the best possible way.
That's the boss I thought it was, and yes, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I felt like I was giving birth to a fully grown adult that was then beating the shit out of me with a boombox.
But
that's a visual.
Gave birth to a 45-year-old man who had 2 boomboxes that he boxing gloves.
I don't want to overhype Celeste the way I did for Undertale, because I know that can be too much for some people, but Celeste is one of those indie games.
It's a masterpiece.
I feel
I'll overhype it. It's
everybody should try. Yeah. It is a masterpiece, absolutely.
But yeah, that soundtrack in general, the Castlevania Lords of Shadows trilogy, and Xenoblade Chronicles is like my number one for soundtracks, because it has everything. It has like hard rock and classical and jazz and anything else that you could imagine. It's all in there. So those are my picks.
I was going to say, those are some really strong picks.
All right, I will jump on. Now I really wish Shanna was here. But for me,
she would love this topic.
She absolutely. Well, I mean, she was on our music and video games podcast. So, for me, I guess 3 sounds like a really good solid number. So for me, I would have to say, Ori and the Blind Forest.
Oh yes, I love
Ori and the Blind Forest. I cannot listen to that soundtrack. Even to this day, I cannot listen to that soundtrack and not start tearing up.
Yeah,
you're allowed to, and I think you're allowed to. I put a trilogy in mine. I mean, Ori and the Will of the Wisp soundtrack is just as good.
Yes, I mean, both Ori games is absolutely stunning. Gareth Coker, who is the composer for both of these games, whom I met at PAX East and tried my damnedest not to just like fan squee all over him. That would have been really, really messy, but he's been at a number of PAX East on like video game composers panel, and he was on one where it was like basically a behind the scenes, like how he makes his music. And I was just like, like Steven Universe starry eyes.
Just imagine it just flows out of his navel like a rainbow.
Like, maybe. Maybe that's behind closed doors. But yes, so the Ori games, so again, I know, Ronnie, you're about to start playing them. So I hope that these games hit you in all of the right spots, because just
I hope they do too. I'm going into it with a very open mind. The only thing that might be, I won't say a problem, but that I know doesn't quite fit my usual thing is, I know that they're shorter games, or at least the first one is, and I tend to prefer longer Metroidvanias because I enjoy exploring the worlds. But I'm going into it with an open mind. I'm not going to
find.
Yeah, like I just watched John stream Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Will of the Wisps.
Yeah, or the Will of the Wisps, and I was just reliving the joy, just watching that, just
And I didn't do like everything.
And you didn't even 100% the game, so
like my iconic, like my favorite in the genre of Metroidvania so far is Hollow Knight. which is one of my favorite.
Amazing soundtrack too. It's not on my 3, but I will absolutely give you that. I also have a very, very strong feeling and soft spot for basically the 4 Supergiant games. Darren Korb is a brilliant composer. Met him at PAX East as well.
Transistor music is so damn good.
Like I will listen to...
Do they have 4 games? Because I'm only thinking of 3 in my
Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, and now Hades.
head. Oh, okay. I didn't know about Pyre. Okay.
Pyre's the one a lot of people skipped over.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
It was still a great game. I mean, a lot of people saw Pyre as kind of like their weakest of their games so far. Still good, just not as good as the others. It's one of those. It's like you see four great options, but you have to exclude one of them. And Pyre was that for a lot of people. Like I will regularly have just Darren Korb's music on in the background while I'm like writing D&D notes or editing artwork. Just it's great stuff.
It's very atmospheric.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, what's your third pick though?
My third, Darkest Dungeon.
Oh yeah.
My third
I'm not surprised.
is the Darkest Dungeon soundtrack because, again, very atmospheric, and the music will adapt in game to your setting. As your torch light gets dimmer and dimmer, the music will ramp itself up. It's getting darker, your peril is increasing, and it's another one of those games. Now, I've always said that for me, the hallmark of a great soundtrack is one that you can listen to on its own without needing to be playing the game to fully enjoy. And
yeah, I can.
And Darkest Dungeon, and all of the ones that I've mentioned, for me, do that. And Darkest Dungeon does a really good job of setting the atmosphere because the game is punishing. Darkest Dungeon is an absolutely punishing game, but it's very rewarding. If you love RNG, if you like to live and die by the RNG, this game is for you. Spencer, I expect you to get on this game.
I say, I don't know about Spencer, but I'm in the middle of playing it.
I know. Yes, I know you're currently playing it. How are you liking it?
I am enjoying it pretty well. I was towards the beginning of the game. The gameplay loop wasn't super exciting at the beginning. But the farther you get, the more that picks up.
Yeah. I will give you that. It's slow in the early going, obviously, because permadeath is a thing, and
yeah. As I said.
Also, it didn't help that I ended up having to restart my game because of an issue. So that probably affected my feelings on the early game, because if you have to repeat the early game, it's going to feel twice as long.
I get that. So that's my answer to your question there, Ronnie, as to modern soundtrack. So
I actually wanted to say something real quick because I just thought of a kind of an honorable mention. It's a modern game, but it has a retro style as Shovel Knight.
Oh, absolutely.
Brilliant. I will. Yes. Just yes.
Anytime we can get Shovel Knight into the conversation, I'm on board.
It's like the NES soundtrack we didn't get.
Yeah.
Jake Kaufman is wonderful.
Is the retro classic we all deserve, except it's not a retro game.
No, but it does a very good job of making you think it is.
For the 3 games that I'm gonna go for, well, 2 of them are, 2 of the 3 are done by Square, and it's because I don't care what people say. Square Enix somehow does amazing soundtracks for stuff. Final Fantasy is obviously one of the greatest ones, but again, as I was talking about, the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy story may have been meh, but the soundtrack was, oh my god, the soundtrack to those 3 in general were just amazing. I think I actually picked up for Final Fantasy 13 itself. I picked up the soundtrack itself separately from the games and stuff, just because of how really good it was. Because I mean, let's just face it, when you're going against like the ultimate and or true final boss in any Final Fantasy game, you get the epic orchestral music, and it's just like that's just what gets me with it. It's just like how epic the orchestral music is. I mean, you got One Winged Angel, you got Dancing Mad, all those ones from Final. From the
Yeah,
Final
you know it's a
Fantasy games.
square. You know it's a square final boss when they break out the Latin. It's
Yeah, when you hear Latin chanting, you know you're in
that's
trouble.
it. Yeah, that's
You know, speaking of that trilogy, that's the trilogy that made you believe that they could put a legitimately a pop song with lyrics as overworld music and somehow make it work.
Yeah, even I was surprised. I was just like, how did they fit that in when all the other kind of music is just weird like that?
They made it work.
Exactly.
I had to go AFK for a second. Could you tell me the name of the game of the series we're talking about right now?
Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah,
Oh,
Final
okay.
Fantasy-
There we go.
Yeah, I was gonna say the
Nice.
trilogy. 13, 32, and Lightning Returns, all those ones. The next series, which
I don't know. I thought we meant Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core, and Dirge of Cerberus. I've never seen a more solid trilogy.
Well, we're talking about just soundtracks, though.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm playing.
yeah.
Dirge.
The next series for me, I don't know if you got. Well, you probably heard of at least one of the games with it, but the Drakengard universe, which includes
That's going back, yeah.
Drakengard, Nier, and actually most recently now Nier Automata, which is an amazing game to do. I started off the first one I have, and I still gotta get actually into the other ones. Is Drakengard 3, which is for the PS3. So that one actually kind of got me into it. That one again, like I said before, Square may suck sometimes when it comes to story and when it comes to plot and some things, but they know how to do soundtracks for games like amazingly. Because I've had some of my favorite songs that I've listened to in video games come from Drakengard 3, and then also Nier Automata has an amazing soundtrack for stuff to it as well, especially with the boss fights and everything like that. Again, when you get the orchestra, the Latin breakdowns, all that kind of stuff, it's just like, what am I listening to?
Well,
and then-
wait until you play Xenoblade.
Yeah, I know. I got to get into that one because I've heard really
I
good
mean, that's
things
not
about-
Square, but it has the feeling.
It's Konami, right?
No, it's actually Nintendo.
I was gonna say it's Nintendo.
It does
Monolith
not
Soft,
seem
which
like a
is the second
Nintendo
party.
game, honestly.
No,
It's-
it because it's the same guy that created Xenogears.
Yep.
So
Oh.
it has that feel like being a
Hence
story.
why it has the Zeno in the name.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't want to call it that. That was just for brand recognition. He wanted to call it Monado.
Yeah.
Mm. Then the third one for me is just because to me it's the classic and going through all the games. The Devil May Cry series always to me just has an amazing soundtrack, especially when you're going through and you're like, you just got done with a fight and it kind of slows down. It's like, okay, so now it's all nice and stuff. Then you get to another boss fight and it ramps up again. That
Honestly,
is-
not this is not saying anything negative about your choice, but I played the early games and I can't remember any of the music.
I think
The-
the Devil,
For
May,
me.
the Devil May Cry soundtracks exist perfectly when you're playing them.
Mm.
And then it's like something that it does slip your mind, and then you go back and play it again, and you're like, oh yeah, this does rock.
Yeah, exactly.
See
Especially
that.
for Devil May
Well,
Cry 4.
when you have- When you have music that is so perfect for the moment that it doesn't stick out on its own, it's a perfect complement. I don't think then it sticks out as much in your mind, even if it's exactly what you need at that point.
Mhm.
Well, some of it, like, we talked about Darkest Dungeon and about the way that it ramps up at certain points. That's very key to the gameplay, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Oh,
is.
Absolutely, it is.
Because that's what you can tell, like, depending on what the music is, like, there's certain music that you have for just, like, the regular enemies and stuff. But then, like, when you have, like, one of the bosses comes out, it ramps up on a whole
Even-
other level for it.
Even when you have full torches and then you're going through and you're running out of torches and the light's going out and it's getting darker and darker, the music starts to ramp up a little bit
Mhm.
just from that.
You know what's funny is I never played Darkest Dungeon just because it doesn't really appeal to me visually, but what you were just talking about, I couldn't help but think of Shadowgate and that stressful
Yeah,
days when your torches were low in Shadowgate on the NES.
absolutely. That's a game I haven't thought of in a while.
Well, that's a game you can sit there and play through in 20 minutes, so...
It's probably one I'm going to play through. I'm slowly going through, like I said, a bunch of games from my childhood, and I'm trying to at least put a chance through all the stuff that's been put up on Switch's online service. which includes some NES games that I never had a chance to play back in the day, even though I owned one, because we did not have a lot of money and you did not get that many games.
So you missed out on the adventures of Bayou Billy?
No, I didn't. That was a game I fucking owned. Thank you very much.
I was just making fun of the fact that when they brought that on the Switch Online, they tried to make it like this is a big deal, and I'm like, literally no one cares about Bayou Billy.
It's a terrible game. I'm sorry. Like, there's probably somebody out there that absolutely loves that game, and I will gladly give you my copy. That game is terrible, and
If you ever wanted to play a better version of it, you play the Japanese version.
I've never played the Japanese version. I believe you.
For some reason, I don't know why they did this. They made the international version way too hard.
Here's the thing: they did that for a lot of older NES games, and I've heard.
I think it had something to do with rentals.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've heard several reasons for it, given by different places in the industry. I don't think there was a single reason. I think every company had their own reason for doing it.
Yeah, I don't know why Konami did it. Like, I know, like, Lion King on the NES was made practically impossible because of rentals.
Yeah. That makes sense. Sorry for hijacking your topic.
No, that's fine.
That's how it happens, though.
That is.
Yep.
That's what it does!
All right, Spencer, what about you?
Oh, a lot of mine are actually going to come from handhelds.
Sure.
Start with the Pokemon series.
Yep.
Pokemon's been slamming since, day one, but it really, you say what you want about the games in terms of the gameplay or the Pokemon design or the features and availability options and the online capability, all that. The music every generation is top tier, fantastic stuff, and it's never the same people. It's always a different, either sometimes it's groups of people, sometimes it's one person. It's incredible to me how this franchise has gone on for, however many years it's been since it came out originally, and like every generation they just smash the music in every single way.
And it gets better each generation somehow.
Yeah, and they don't
keep getting better.
They don't do a lot of what like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest does in terms of like reusing a lot of the same music, but like adjusting it. Excuse me, or like adding a flair to it. Like for example, how every Final Fantasy game has like a different Chocobo theme, with like each theme being a different genre of music that it's being taken from. Pokemon really kind of tries to be more unique in each one of its soundtracks, which I really appreciate for something that is so not that way in like terms of gameplay and like other features that they kind of stay traditional, lean a little more towards the traditional for. It is nice to see something in that franchise that goes all the way in the other end and is always innovating and bringing new stuff. Like, for example, this in Gen 8, they incorporate like crowd chanting and cheering in the gym leader and champion battle themes, so you actually hear that in the theme when you're listening to it, like on your own outside of the game, which like just it's so immersive and it's so good.
It makes me wonder why they never did that before. Like have the gyms be these giant stadiums with all the sound and the fury. Like they can never go back to you being in a room with some asshole.
People can say what they want about them. Yeah. People can say what they want about the new games, but the whole setup, both audio, visual, everything for the gym battles, that is what kids always imagined they were like.
How
Absolutely.
The song that plays when you fight Eternatus.
Yes.
It's epic. It's like something out of Dragon Quest.
Personal favorite out of Gen 8 is the gym leader theme. I just like it's so like it's so
the Battle Tower music that Toby Fox did, and holy shit, none of us mentioned Undertale.
Well, we hadn't
Don't
gotten.
worry, someone's mentioning Undertale.
We hadn't gotten.
Okay, good. Because I just realized I should have put that.
Well, I haven't played Undertale, so I'm obviously not going to mention it.
Okay.
What I will mention, though, to continue down that path of handheld games, is The World Ends With You.
That was amazing.
That's a very stylized, specific kind of soundtrack, but it hits all the right notes, and it's a fantastic listen outside of playing it as well.
It's just cool.
Yeah, Yeah.
Considering how much you and I argue so much on these episodes, we have very similar tastes. Because that was one of my 3.
Now you have to come up with something else.
Oh no! Now you have to go with a different one.
It's
Delta
like-
Rune.
So,
That
but yeah,
music and it's so different than anything else Square did for anything else.
it like I play that game and I'm like I have to remind myself that this is a Square Enix game because
No,
like it
that
doesn't
was-
have the same like cues and like tells that normal Square Enix games have like RPG wise. So like it's so strange. You've got this little like perfect gem on the DS and it's so weird and funky because of like the control scheme and like how the button like gameplay mechanics work. And then like
How did Atlas release a game under the title Square Enix?
Ooh.
Well, I'm saying it's like an Atlas game. It's
I
very
can't
hip.
argue that fact.
No, it's because it's true. Like it's a very hip sort of soundtrack and the style and everything.
If somebody
Yes.
told me it was a Persona spinoff,
Yeah,
I
it
would
could
not
have
have-
definitely been like some obscure Shin Megami Tensei game.
I mean, you're not wrong.
understand what you're saying, but like what kills me is that when they announced the sequel recently, it's like all these people are like, "This is just ripping off Persona 5." Oh my god! And it's just like, it's like I want to get into these games, but then fans act like this, and I'm like, do I really want to be part of a fandom where these people are this ignorant about gaming?
You can
Like,
enjoy a
it's-
game without being a part of that fandom.
I know, but it's like it's such a turnoff to me when people are like just so blatantly ignorant.
I-
and they're just like, it's
I-
only Persona 5, and I'm just like, yeah.
I agree, but there's people like that in every fandom. Like there's people
Oh,
like
yeah.
that in fandoms you love.
Sonic the Hedgehog, worst fandom ever. Still, a lot of the games are pretty good.
Worst fandom ever? I might argue that. Bad fandom, yes.
What do you think is the worst?
What do I think is the worst or the most toxic?
It's apples and
I'd
apples.
say
right
most
there.
toxic.
Yeah, most
If I,
toxic.
was, if I was gonna go most toxic, I would say the early Undertale fandom.
Well, okay, you're right. Okay, yeah, I can't.
And I was part of it. Not the toxic part of it, but like I was part of the fandom. I loved a lot of the fan works and fan creations, and I was supportive of some of the community could be. But I was so embarrassed to be part of that fandom as well. I don't think much else in video games. There was stuff in other media that actually compares to how toxic that fandom was. If I was going to go after that, I would probably say the League of Legends fandom.
No, I'm unaware of that, so I'll have to defer to you on that.
Yeah. But don't get me
Slight
wrong.
sidetrack, but that's okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
In terms of the third chunk, I'd go with the Red Dead Redemption franchise.
Oh, good choice.
It's one of those ambience kind of games that like normally you would only associate the soundtrack as like something in game you would want to listen to, but like it's got such a chill like it's like you could play that music and sleep to it because it's so mellow and like just very vibe centric. I am so guilty of spending just way too many hours of both 1 and 2 just riding around on my horse, listening to the soundtrack and doing absolutely fucking nothing. Like
The soundtrack feels like
all the
something
time.
right. The soundtrack feels like something right out of a movie, which is exactly what they were going for.
yeah, I'm not as familiar with their later GTA titles, but like Rockstar really does a good job cinematically with their Red Dead Redemption titles for sure.
Absolutely.
That's a really good choice.
I guess it finally came to me.
Yep.
So Undertale.
I guess I'll lead with Undertale since that was the one that we kind of gave away. But I mean, how much do I need to say about it? I mean, Undertale has such a distinctive music that, like, the joke on YouTube is that all they have to do is play 2 or 3 bars of any Undertale song and people know what it is.
Can I give like a very brief history of the track Megalomania or Megalomania?
I know what you're going to talk about, and you absolutely can.
Because I mentioned the game earlier, and it was an amazing experience to play through on stream. Was Live Alive, which is basically like Chrono Trigger before Chrono Trigger.
Here's the thing: I've never played that game, and you guys have
it's-
already convinced me to play it.
It's so good. But one of the each chapter has a boss at the end, and every boss at the end of a chapter has a name similar to or derived from ODO, and you find out only at the end what that even means. But there's a really bumpin' awesome track that's used, and Toby Fox, when he was working on his first game, which was the
Undertale fan game.
No, it was a hack for Earthbound. It was called the Halloween hack.
The Halloween hack for Earthbound, yes.
Yeah, he wanted to get that Live Alive song and put it in Earthbound.
When I said Undertale fan game, I meant to say Earthbound fan game.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, you knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
He wanted to put this... He loved that track, which was called Megalomania, and he wanted to put it in Earthbound, and he couldn't get it to work on a technical level, so he wrote his own song called Megalovania, which wound up being, in Undertale, like kind of a remix version of it. But it's so weird because they don't even sound alike until you play them both at the same time, and it sounds like two halves of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I was going to
say, like, yeah, it goes back to Live Alive in a weird way.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is a game that I have only heard about tangentially, but it's you guys have sold me on it over the course of this podcast. So.
Okay, I'm about to break the law. Do you want the ROM?
I can find the ROM. Don't worry about it.
All right, I have it already patched and everything.
I know exactly where to go to find my ROMs. But yeah, so I mean, Undertale between songs like Megalovania, songs like
Bone Trousel.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bone Trousel, absolutely. There's so much good, and it is so amazing that all of these different ones were able to be done by one person, basically.
And I think he's almost more of a musician than a game designer.
I would agree with you, absolutely.
Like, you ask him, hey, how's Deltarune coming along? And he's like, it's great, I've written like 13 more songs.
That song will come out by the time I have children, maybe.
I did enjoy playing the demo, though, and it had
so did I. I'm very... From playing the demo, I will go, take as long as you need, because when it's done, it will be a classic for me. It just might take 20 years.
It may come out before Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2.
You're right.
This is true.
So
how many generations is Final Fantasy Remake going to be stretched across? Right?
At least 7.
All the generations.
I don't think so. Here's the thing. I know it's a joke, but I think that the next two parts are going to come much quicker because most of the base work has already been done from the first game.
We don't even know how many parts there's going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Maybe there'll be 7. I'm assuming there's 3. If I'm wrong, then maybe it'll go across more generations. But if it's only 3, I think we'll get both in this generation.
He stated directly in multiple interviews that he wants to have smaller bite-sized pieces for these chapters or whatever we're going to call them, once they announce what they want to call them, whether they're chapters or volumes or whatever. He wants to lean more towards the more like bite-sized chunklets so he can have them come out sooner rather than later. So take that for what you will.
But that's how much they're expanding on every little thing,
Exactly, because like what I'm thinking, like personally, my what I feel like what they're gonna do with the second chapter of it is go up until Junon and just really expand on like the Calm section in terms of like both the flashback and also like giving you more stuff to do in Calm, having the Chocobo breeder be like a whole thing. Obviously the mines can be expanded upon. That's going to be a bigger dungeon than it was. It's like 3 rooms in the original game, and then you go to Junon and you have like the whole like in the town Junon and then upper Junon with like everything you do as sneaking with Shinra, and then you're on the ship, and that's a good chunk of game right there. And if they're going to expand like they did with Midgar, it only makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say I could definitely see them doing that.
In any way, I will await for the heat death of the universe when the game eventually comes out. So anyway, another soundtrack, Ronnie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we went from Final Fantasy VII. I may as well talk about a game that has Final Fantasy VII music. We're going into my replacement for The World Ended You, the Kingdom Hearts series.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is one of the most amazing soundtracks I've ever heard.
Yoko Shimomura is an amazing composer. She does some outstanding work.
Which, by the way, I'm realizing right now, Yoko Shimomura is the person who did Live Alive.
That's true, yeah.
I'm because I have it on. I put the Wikipedia page up, so I didn't forget about it.
And that had a fantastic soundtrack.
But yeah, no, we can talk all day about how ridiculous the Kingdom Hearts story can be or anything else, but nobody can deny that the music of Kingdom Hearts is really good. Is just really, really.
And you're
solid.
not only getting like a lot of good original songs, you're getting a lot of Disney music too.
Yeah, and who can say no to Disney music, honestly?
Not
I
very many
agree.
people.
But I also think that the fact that it has some amazing Disney music, yet that still doesn't overshadow the original music, shows how strong the original music is. That the original music is still memorable, even compared to all of these classic tunes from all the Disney franchises. And unless anybody else has anything to say about Kingdom Hearts, I'll end with what was going to be my only one for this topic before we switch to 3.
That's my fault. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. I was totally fine with it, and it was not hard for me to figure out my other 2.
I can't pick just one ever. So
Yeah, it's fine. Which is Final Fantasy XIV. Has anybody else here played the game and heard the music?
I've
Unfortunately,
seen
no.
it on Twitch. That's about all I could say.
Okay.
Nope, sadly.
Final Fantasy XIV.
I've had to
has
listen
some-
to some of it for our Final Fantasy 14 episode. So
Final Fantasy XIV has some of the strongest music in its franchise or in Square games in general, and a huge part of its strength comes in the variety it has. It is in the Guinness Book of World Records for most video game songs in a game.
Really?
At 384 before Stormblood came out. There have been 2 expansions since then. They are definitely over 500 at this point.
oh yeah, the number of Final Fantasy 14 soundtracks that are out for not just you have you have A Realm Reborn. No, you first for Final Fantasy 14 you had the original soundtrack, like version 1. You had that soundtrack, and then you had a soundtrack, an album put out for A Realm Reborn, and then there's been a multi-disc set for each expansion since.
And like every expansion has its own theme. A Realm Reborn, all the primal fights, while each of them was written very, very differently, had very strong rock elements to it.
Yeah.
Which you don't see in a lot of stuff. And then in Heavensward, you get a lot more of that prototypical Final Fantasy music with strings and just the kind of slow rising melodies. And like if you take somebody who's played through Final Fantasy XIV and you show them a song, even if they could not tell you the title of it, they could tell you what expansion it was from just because of how it sounded. And they can probably tell you what it was from, even if they can't give you the exact name. It has everything from my personal favorite, the Good King Moggle theme, the primal Moogle that you fight along with his 7 Moogle minions that plays like a PvP fight. But it's basically This Is Halloween from Nightmare Before Christmas singing about the king. That's what it is.
I looked up that thing about the Guinness World Record. It is true that it had the world record in 2017.
Did it lose it?
But, yeah, I mean, obviously Smash Brothers Ultimate has the most songs right now. It has
Does it? How much does Smash Bros. Ultimate?
900 songs.
Okay, that would.
And they
yes.
add more with each character.
There you go. I'm like, I know they're up to over 500 in 14 right now. Okay, but I was right that they did.
Yeah, it did. At the time, it did. It broke the record that was previously held by RuneScape.
Absolutely. I was blanking on Ultimate. I didn't. Apparently, I was running off of old information, but that's still impressive.
I mean, it's not that old. It's 2017 when it had it. So
Yeah.
This would be 50 years ago at this point. What are you talking about?
Time has no meaning.
January was a decade ago. Let's be real.
Yeah. But between Final Fantasy XIV having new remixed versions of dozens of old Final Fantasy songs, but just having hundreds of original songs that are just as strong, that live up to just as much, I can't really think of many other games that even compare to the variety and the strength and the depth of the Final Fantasy XIV's music library. Okay.
Alrighty, so
I think that was it for me.
all right. Well, John is telling me that he has to jump off. So
Yeah. It's about time to feed the dog.
All right.
Get dinner going.
yeah, you do that. But again,
Why the dog has been so angry?
Thank you so much for being on. I know this was only your second episode, but you know,
I wanted to be on more, but it was always like something that always came up, you know.
Hey, that's okay. I will catch you on Twitch. You can catch John on Twitch.
Twitch.tv/necrovmx.
There you go. He streams daily. So
Daily, yeah.
So you want to catch him there? By all means, have a blast. And
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. You guys, you know your shit.
It's not always bullshit on downloadable content.
No, you guys.
Just
it's
75% of the time.
It's been very good discussions, a lot of good discourse today. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. I'm glad you did. So go feed Gibbs and go take a rest.
Yeah, I gotta get dinner as well. But yeah, Gibbs is he's gonna be. If it went like another 2 minutes, you would have heard the sound of him bouncing off of my door.
No, okay.
All right, I'll see you guys.
Yep. See ya.
Thanks for having me on.
Yep.
So, Brian, what do you think about just switching over to DLC podcast streams? We'll just jump onto your topic, just throw it.
Just go on Twitch on just chatting and just abuse the crap out of that for a couple of hours. All right, so and then there were 4. All right, so we have Ryan and Spencer, and both of them will RNG it. So
this is the point in the horror movie when we are supposed to split up to cover more ground that way.
Oh yes, we can do more damage that way. All right, Spencer, odds or evens?
Evens.
All right, let's roll that d20. It is evens. It's a 12. Spencer, you're up.
I figure I missed out on being able to talk about the speedrunning podcast due to my own inability to read a proper schedule. So I figured for my last turn here, I would talk about speedrunning in general, as well as just covering some of the more recent turnabouts in speedrunning, as well as just covering any sort of questions or things that you guys wanted to talk about in terms of anything you know about speedrunning.
Sounds like a good topic.
As you guys, as Brian alluded to earlier, I stream as well, and I am a speedrunner predominantly in my stream. With what goes on speedrunning in my life personally is a lot of community bases that you don't normally get to see as just a viewer, because there's so much back and forth with tech and routing, understanding how the game reacts in certain situations. Every community it's so helpful, even though it's a competitive scenario. You guys we're all running against each other's times. We're trying to get better times on the leaderboards, world records, etc. But the communities are always trying to help everybody become better. It's not like you would see in most competitive scenarios where you want the people you're competing against to do bad and not do as well, so you yourself can perform better and have a better chance of winning. It's a really unique competitive scene that I think is really fun and inclusive to basically anyone who has interest in basically any game at this point. Speedrunning has evolved now to the point where you can pick up pretty much any game you want and speedrun it, and if there's not a community, there's probably at least a few people who have done something with it already.
As I say, absolutely. Speedrunning is a topic that's close to my heart because before my brother passed away, he was working on a Celeste speedrun to make it onto the charts. And he was doing a lot on that, and he had me watch a lot of his stuff and give him some advice, and it was just it's amazing to see the things that people can do with speedruns, and how some of the most interesting things in speedruns for me are the different ways that people find to use the mechanics that no one would ever think of. An example I'll give is Hollow Knight speedruns. When you die, you leave behind a little ghost. Well, you also have a downward pogo that you can use off of enemies. By dying in specific areas, you can pogo off of your ghost to get to areas you weren't supposed to be able to get to until later in the game and skip whole paths of progression. And I love seeing those kinds of... I don't want to call them exploits because there's stuff that's deliberately in the game, but those kinds of unintended game mechanics that come from just knowing the game so well and what people are able to do with them.
And that speaks towards something else we were talking about earlier, how, you were referring how to you've had your fill of FF1 on the Nintendo. Speedrunning is a great way to see any game that you've played to death casually in a completely new light, because I guarantee you, no matter what game you've played casually, as many hours as you put into it, I guarantee you, if you have never experienced a speedrun of that game, there's stuff that you've never seen before.
I watched Games Done Quick do a speedrun of Final Fantasy, and just the 12 leaps of logic you have to do to manipulate the RNG of the game, because the RNG is based off of junk data, to be able to make the game do what you want. I mean, holy crap, it was like watching magic.
Yeah, that's... like... I totally admire what speedrunners do to make a game their bitch. Like, it was... I forget which, it might have been last year, I was watching some videos from, I think, it was one of the Games Done Quick events. And they did the Dragon Warrior. They did Dragon Warrior on NES, and... like, the amount of knowledge that the speedrunner had to know which pixel to land on that would correctly manipulate, the quote RNG. Manipulate the RNG to getting the exact enemy and then the exact sequence of button presses in the menus that would ensure that he got like a crit or that the exact item drop that he needed. And I'm just like, how?
It's magic, my friend.
It's magic. Well,
what it is like I was saying, it's a collaboration of minds, dozens if not hundreds of people working on this. Not every day for every person, but it's funny, a lot of techs are initially found by casual players who just like stumble across something, and a speedrunner will see it and be like, I wonder what I can do with that in other situations. And then eventually a skip or a glitch or something is found based off that information. This happens countless times, time and time again, where like just like innocuous people that aren't part of the community become part of the community because they help find a glitch or a tech or some strategy that helps save time somewhere. And like I just this morning, actually, literally as I was right before we started recording, I was doing a commentary for a Chrono Trigger 100% speedrun where they did every side quest in the game instead of just doing the traditional any percent. And that route is so tight from an execution standpoint that it's not only about when you're pressing the buttons in terms of like, oh, okay, I have to do this attack next to make sure that the RNG is advanced correctly. It's actually when, in terms of what's happening on the screen. So like, you're battling Nizbel in the 65 million, and you actually can only do your inputs when the enemy is doing attacks, otherwise the RNG advances too far. So the timing is down to like only during animations, or only during this character's attack phase, or only during this. It's incredible how like the older retro games can become so manipulated because of how long and how many people have been working on over the years.
And
you can go ahead, Brian.
That's exactly it. Like, the amount of time, and obviously there has to be time, someone had to go in and figure out the code to be able to manipulate the RNG into doing exactly what you want, right down to, again, what determines the RNG, the animation, the inputs. Like, somebody had to do, collaboratively, a group of people had to just dive into the code, because I'm sure some of that was figured out by trial and error, but I'm also pretty confident that somebody went in, figured out, like, oh, if you went into the code and went, oh, if you do this, this, and this, then this results in a this.
From what I gather from this kind of stuff, it's about 50-50 on people actually going in and figuring out what it is by looking into the code and looking at the inputs and stuff, and about 50% just trial and error from people playing the game so much that even if it's only 0.1% of people are going to find a new thing like that, when you have millions of people playing it, or people who've played it in thousands of times, you're going to run across somebody who did that.
Yeah, so here's a great example. This never led to anything tech-wise, but I was playing RE4 doing a speedrun, and there is the section where the church is that you find Ashley in. And after you pass the church on the right, there's those platforms that are like over a lake, and it's like wooden platforms that are held up on ropes.
Yep.
I jumped across that first like chasm in the wood, and I landed in front of there's when you jump across, there's two guys on the other end, and as you jump, one jumps across, like basically right as you're pressing the jump button, and then the other guy is throwing an axe across the chasm at you. So when I jumped, I landed right in the same spot as the guy who's throwing the axe. The game was very confused, so instead of putting me on the ground, it just bumped me up and put Leon's feet on top of this guy's head. So the game decided that the ground had gone like 6 feet higher in the air or whatever. So I was just running around like out of bounds basically. Yeah. And it was completely random. I had nothing planned. There's no tech behind that. It just happened. I unfortunately stumbled back in bounds by accident, and it has yet to be recreated, so we don't know, because one of the biggest story like loops is going from the church to Del Lago to get the key to open the church and then going back. So if there was a way that you could enter into the church and get the game to think that you've already gotten the key and advance the story to the point where you can get Ashley, that would be an enormous time save. So that kind of stuff can like build and trickle effect into getting like enormous skips that save huge amounts of time.
I mean, going off what you said earlier about, just the community aspects, how many people are working on this to get this stuff, I feel like a lot of this is similar to the drive that people have and the popularity of ARG games, where people have to find hidden information inside of games. Say it's why FNAF is so popular in some ways, but where there's a community aspect of people trying to put stuff together, trying to find stuff, trying to break code, trying to break things down. And speedrunning is kind of like that, except you make the game yourself, because you're choosing a game, and then as a community you're trying to figure out, trying to break the game down, trying to fully understand it, and trying to figure out ways to do things that nobody would have thought of before, to cut time off. And it's just, if you take a look at any game, just how many different things that people figure out in the game that no one person would ever experience, even if they spent all their time on it. It's only because there's such a community behind it that any of this is even possible.
Yep. And if any individual person becomes burnt out and doesn't want to play the game anymore, they're still a part of the community, still watch. And then, like, for example, in Final Fantasy VII, recently, not very recently, but recently, a skip was found that you can skip the entire first part of Cosmo Canyon. The first time you go to Cosmo Canyon, you could skip the entire thing. And it was a whole hullabaloo, because it's still like the kinks of the step route manipulation are still being ironed out, and it's a very precise like manipulation that you have to do to get the skip to work properly. And this gets people who haven't run the game in years to get into it, because it's big time saves like that are great ways to entice people to come back to a game, or to get new people to try the game.
And also, whenever a big skip like that is found, I will usually see it reported on like Kotaku or Polygon. Like, I remember when somebody found a skip in Ocarina of Time to go from the Deku Tree to Ganon, like Final Form Ganon in Ocarina of Time. Like, there's a skip where you can just go through various strategic clipping and manipulating of the code. Deku Tree right to Ganon, and because when you go to Ganon and you're fighting, Beast Ganon there, the game thinks that you've acquired the Master Sword, so you're young Link, and all you have to do is walk under Ganon, holding out a Deku stick, and the game says, "Oh, the game interprets the Deku stick as the Master Sword." So you're young Link, you just walk right under Ganon without taking damage, hold out a Deku stick, and it's doing max damage the entire time.
You hold as you're not pressing attack. You're literally just like pull out a Deku stick and just walk with it, and it's attacking him. Like this, just the stick being out is attacking him. So
it's like, oh, so that's how you suddenly beat the game in under 15 minutes.
I was gonna say, Legend of Zelda has
the tech that you're referring to is commonly called save corruption, where with a lot of games have this kind of skip where you do inputs in certain manners at certain points in certain frames, and the game's code like piles up, and like just it gets so confused that you can overflow it into thinking that it needs to put you somewhere else. And like there's a skip like this for Super Mario World where you can go from the first level where you get Yoshi the first time
to the credits,
and before you even leave the screen where you get Yoshi, you can jump it to halfway through the credits.
Yep.
I was gonna say, The Legend of Zelda has a history of this, because Link to the Past, I know, had the issue where you could, when you first go into Hyrule Castle, you could get hit, you could jump off of a ledge, save and quit. When you come back in, the game thinks you're between those two layers. You go into Hyrule Castle, you let yourself get hit by an enemy into the wall, you go through the wall, and then you walk up to the end of the game, because the final level is on the same map as Hyrule Castle, because Hyrule Castle's map is so small, you can walk up to where the Triforce is and just jump off.
Yep.
And beat the game. I've done that before. You beat the game in 5 minutes.
Yeah, most speedruns have something like that, but those runs tend to not be very competitive because it's usually just like, you do it once to say you've done it, there's not much to it. It's not like long enough to have a lot of variance or RNG elements. It's just like you do the inputs, you get the time, you're done. There might be a few seconds off between the world record and your time, but unless it's really important to you, you're probably not going to like sit there and just grind your face off trying to get that world record time on that skip specifically.
I was going to say, Spencer can correct me, because you definitely know more than I do on this, but for anybody who's listening who isn't as familiar, there are multiple different types of speedruns. With each speedrun, they will define like whether this is a no glitch version, whether this is a 100% version, whether this is an any percent version, so that your speedrun's only being compared against speedruns that are in the same category.
Yeah, the definitions change between both game and console. Some even go by like, for more recent games with like different patches and versions to it, they might say, oh, this is the patch you use because these skips work and these skips don't, kind of thing. And then like the categories themselves vary. For basically anything you can think of, you can really make a category, because speedrunning starts as just a true any percent, beat the game as fast as you can, and then from there it's certain rules that limit you, so you can't do usually the most broken things, and then from there it goes on and so forth to do more limitations or challenges to either make the run more difficult or more interesting to watch, depending on what the streamer is looking to be doing.
Yeah, just I figured it was important to bring that out, because some people might not, who aren't involved in the community, might not know what we're talking about.
Sure, of course.
And it's just I just sit in awe. It's not something that I'm like, I like Spencer. I know that obviously you will go on stream and you'll just grind for hours, you know, sometimes multiple runs, and I'm just like for me personally, I could never. That's something I would probably never be able to do. But I know a lot of people get so much enjoyment out of it. And I know when I watch you do it, like Resident Evil 4, like some of my favorite moments of that game, it's like the like Boss Salazar skip, which is just hilarious.
Oh god,
it is so much. It is so funny. Like you have like Salazar, who is an annoying but hilarious character. And then you finally, and then there's a glitch in that big old boss room where you can just bypass him all together, walk out behind him, turn around, collect the money, run.
The part about that skip too is the fact that the game, like, so the skip that Brian's alluding to, if you're not familiar with Resident Evil 4 or like it's been a while since you played it, the room that you fight Salazar in is this 2-leveled floor, and like there's like basically a catwalk along the edge of the wall on the second floor, and then a huge open space to where there's a bottom floor, and then all the way across in the middle back wall is like one platform raised that leads to a door, and that door is where you would exit. But Salazar emerges from this side of the wall. So, like, normally in the game, if you tried to do it, the stuff would be in the way and you couldn't go through. So, what we do is we incorporate a glitch that makes us go faster than we should normally be able to go. And then we just run to the edge of the platform, drop down, and the game thinks that you are on the ground, but you're really just in the air. And you just run across the chasm, and because you're out of bounds, you don't interact with the like Salazar sprite, so you could just walk up to the door, walk through it, and then you turn around and the money's there because the game's like, well, if you got through the door, you obviously beat him, so here's the money that you didn't grab, you idiot. Why'd you forget it? It's like, thanks.
It is one of the funniest glitches. It's like, nope, see ya. Oh, and by the way, I'm stealing your 50,000 pesetas. Thank you.
He's Castellan. He's got plenty of cash.
Yeah, he's got money. He should be using it to help his people.
Of course, when it comes to Resident Evil 4, it still has to be where Salazar just goes, Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, and then you finally fight him, and you can just ignore him during a speed run.
Yeah.
So, but it's just
as you should.
I watch Spencer do it, and I watch sometimes other speedrunners. It's a thing of beauty. It's an absolute thing of beauty. So
it's one of those things that it's a very frustrating day-to-day hobby / job based on your income as a streamer, but when you do well, it's very rewarding. And like just every community, like every speedrunners community is so supportive and helpful. Like it's great to just get like support when you're having those, like in Resident Evil 4 we refer to it as the comfy village time, where you'll just be stuck in the first chapter of the game, not 1-1, but like chapter 1 in its entirety, and just like constantly having like dumb stuff happen where you have to constantly reset, and you're sitting there for like you said, Brian, like sometimes hours. I've had streams where I've played for 4 hours straight and I never saw the castle for 1 second. And that's just, that's something that you accept as a speedrunner, or you stop speedrunning, because there's no middle ground. You have to work hard to get good times. You're never, there's a common meme in speedrunning that's like a free world record, because there's games that have like categories that haven't been explored, or like maybe it's a newer game so no one's established a speedrun for it or whatever, and it's like this mythical thing, the free world record, because it's so hard to get good runs together, let alone get a world record. So it's like this mythical unicorn, so to speak, of the free world record. Ooh. So like anytime a new game comes out, it's like, oh, who's gonna get that first world record?
Anything else you want to talk about for speedrunning, or you think you're good?
I think that covers it. We've had it's been a very long stream, and we've also had podcast, and we've also had an entire podcast dedicated to speedrunning too. So if you want to know more, just go listen to that episode. I don't know exactly what number that is, but that would.
It's there, and also check Spencer out on Twitch as well. I know you stream most nights, and it's
Sunday to Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard. I usually speedrun, and I sometimes do other casual stuff. Like right now, my stream had a follower incentive where we are doing a casual playthrough of Final Fantasy VII where I'm getting every materia and I'm maxing the AP on all of the materia as well. So that's a fun little side thing that I've been doing on nights where the speedrunning is wears me down.
Was that twitch.tv/silentmartyr?
Correct.
All right, so you have that as well. All right, Ryan, we take the train to you.
Yep. So what I'm going to talk about is actually partially inspired by the fact that Brian has decided to revisit Parasite Eve for Twitch and stuff like that, and I'm
heartwarming holiday tale that is Parasite Eve.
Exactly, and I'm going into this topic because we brought it up actually a little bit when we were talking about the anniversary. I forget which anniversary of Parasite Eve it was on quite a few
20
podcasts.
It was 20th anniversary.
So the interesting topic I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to keep it to high school level, is because, and I've talked about this before on stuff, especially on your Twitch a little bit. How accurate is the science, not only in Parasite Eve, but also for a little bit of the Resident Evil series? Because we know that for Parasite Eve, it's basically talking about mitochondria in the body, and then for Resident Evil, they blow it up into like weird proportions, but also like the virology basically in Resident Evil, like the T cells, all that stuff, and like the mutations and whatnot.
I think I needed to be warned about this. I need to go read up on this stuff before getting into this.
Yeah, I mean, like, just I think the science. Well, the science in Parasite Eve is actually a lot more accurate than Resident Evil.
That is
true. Let's
yeah.
just get that right out of the way now. Like,
well, it depends on where we're talking about in Resident Evil, because there are certain things in Resident Evil that are plausible. Then there are things in Resident Evil that make no goddamn sense in any universe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
G-Virus.
Yeah, with you, Ryan, being like an actual like vet person.
Yeah, exactly.
like you know your stuff, and Parasite Eve's science, like, it's like the novel is written by a biologist for crying out loud, and the game is the sequel to the novel. So, like, a lot of the science in the first Parasite Eve game is factually correct. It's, I mean, I've been making a joke on the stream, like, you need to have like a 10th grade biology knowledge to fully comprehend this game. That's not entirely a joke, because
no, it isn't,
because the talking about cellular biology is actually like it's a thing. It's not technobabble. It's actually actual factual science.
It really is, and because I can remember with it, like, just seeing stuff. As the joke goes now with people saying, well, when are we ever going to use this biology stuff? All that we really needed to know is that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It's like, well, there's more to it than that, obviously, but it's...
Yeah, but that's all you need to know for the test.
Basically. And I've always felt it's like, there are some things like, yeah, Resident Evil, it blows things up, but there is some truth in a little bit of the biology and virology.
Well, I mean, some of the stuff from Resident Evil, like, we know because scientists that are movie and video games fans have already basically come out with a zombie virus is absolutely plausible.
It really is.
Like, could really happen. Will it happen? hopefully never. We don't have anything that would easily mutate into something like that. But are there equivalent things, and could this actually happen? Yes, absolutely, it could.
At this point in 2020, are we really at hopefully never?
Absolutely right. Could a virus do something the way hybrids do, where it deactivates the genes that allow something that prevents something to keep growing to grow to incredibly large sizes? Yes, absolutely.
That is
it's
true.
part of why ligers are the way they are. That's a natural one because they don't inherit the gene. But could a virus deactivate that gene? Yeah, that's plausible. A spider couldn't necessarily get that big because of exoskeleton reasons. But like the idea of because of the every time it gets larger, it cubes, and eventually they're like, it's the reason we don't see insects get so large. But, but the larger versions, like the incredibly large sharks or anything like that, absolutely, those are plausible. The G virus creating matter from nothing?
No. That's pure science fiction there.
That's science fiction. There's no way that's plausible. What happened with Wesker is kind of half plausible, half not, in that could a virus turn off aging and keep you at relatively peak conditions? They're doing research on literally that right now.
Exactly.
But by turning off the way how each time our cells divide, what is it, telomeres? We keep losing little more, and it makes it so we can't keep dividing them. That can turn that off, and that would do about half of what they're talking about with him. The other half is him becoming a god and getting tentacles, and those are pure science fiction.
Yep. The one that was actually really interesting to me, Resident Evil 4 was always one of the more interesting ones because of like the parasite that the last Plagueis, the parasite that got into you, because, and this is actually one thing that I was crazy enough to research up. There are certain parasites that actually can have an influence kind of like on the mind, not necessarily of humans, but of other creatures that can actually kind of make them zombified. It's actually Resident Evil 7, I believe. Yeah, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard.
That's kind of the premise of Last of Us, is because there's a parasite that does that's well known at this point, that does that to ants.
Yep, exactly. And Resident Evil 7 was very much like that because of the fungi that was like the main bioweapon there.
One second, if you're going to talk about 7, can you guys tell me in the chat when you're done? Because I'm going to take my headphones off. I haven't played 7 yet.
Same.
Yeah, I haven't played 7 either.
So you might want to try to go spoiler free or avoid 7.
The other thing I will say about that is the way that the fungi acts as a bioweapon, it is actually plausible to how some other fungi actually can sort of parasitize other animals. I mean, one that parasitizes ants. That's kind of what it led to. It kind of led to me to think about like what that is. Is this fungi? Could it actually possibly do that? Because we know that there is a kind that can do it to ants, but that's kind of like why I've always been interested in the Resident Evil series, is because there is some truth in the science to it, like of what it can actually do. Not like how the proportions that they blow it up to, but there is a little bit of truth, and that's why I like that one. And also, again, Parasite Eve with the mitochondria, there is actual science based in that. So that's, again, one of the things that I thought, yeah, the scientist in me, especially with biology, got really interested in those games because of those things. All right.
That actually covers that. One of Luis's notes that you come across actually talks about 4 different examples of different parasites in the wild that do things that are detrimental to the host for reasons that are useful for the parasite. I believe the note is in the Novistador's sewers section in the toilet, but I might be misremembering. It's been a while since I've actually covered an in-depth
yes, that's where you want to find the plot, in the toilet.
Resident Evil, isn't that where it belongs?
Oh man, I mean that's where you find that's a plot turd, is what it is.
Basically.
Is it safe for me to come back?
Yep, it is.
But yeah, it's. I agree. I mean, I love when video games take their cues, and it's like, yeah, we know this isn't an actual thing, but maybe.
There are some. It's like, I know there are probably some other games that I haven't played, but to me, it's always been the Resident Evil series that makes me kind of think a little bit about like that kind of things. Even though, again, things are blown up to proportions like crazy, but still.
It is. It's always interesting, and then of course you have other things. I mean, other similarly like Dead Space. I mean, later Dead Space.
I think BioShock's another good example of
Yep.
of what ifs kind of science.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most interesting. And BioShock is actually my favorite game series, so that's again another thing that I really liked.
Like, can you inject something into you that rewrites your DNA so quickly that you can shoot electricity out of your hands?
No.
No, you can't. We wish, but no.
Yeah,
Let's put it
but
this way.
in the year 2000.
That is one thing from it is absolutely plausible for you to rewrite your DNA in such a way that you could generate an electric shock, but there is no way that you would be able to overcome the resistance to shoot it in the air. You could definitely touch someone and shock them. They could do that, but there is no way to shoot it through the air.
You mean I can't just like inject something and immediately shoot bees out of my hands? I can't do that.
Ooh, bees.
I can't. Sad.
I don't know if MythBusters ever like covered any of that stuff before, like with some of these things in video games. I'd have to look it up again, but I swear that MythBusters at one point probably did do something like that. But
where is Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman? Let's get them on.
I think I've watched all of MythBusters, and I don't think they ever really touched on video games. But it would totally.
Actually, yes, they did. Metal Gear Solid.
Okay, yeah.
Metal Gear Solid. They did touch on.
Okay, you're right.
To be doing that for like, let me stop you there and say the answer is going to be no.
No.
No. Is this possible? No. Move on.
All right.
I don't know. All I know about Metal Gear Solid is I played it for an hour for the podcast, and then told Brian I'm not going to be on the podcast because I don't like this game enough to continue it.
Yeah, you were like, nope. I'm sorry, I gave it the good old college try, but no. So, all right. Anything else?
Nope. I think that was it that I was gonna do.
All right. Well, then that means it leaves me.
Well, actually, one thing I'll say is you brought up Parasite Eve and you brought up Resident Evil, but you didn't bring up the cousin of Resident Evil, Dino Crisis. Is Dino Crisis reasonable in scientific terms?
We
can move on.
Now we start getting into time travel. Then we start getting into time travel, and then we need to get H.G. Wells in on this episode.
I was just trolling. Don't take it serious.
Next time on DLC.
Next time on DLC, we bring back a dead science. All right.
Anyways.
All right. So I guess so. The last word is with me. So my topic for this particular final episode and final free play is thematically appropriate. I'm going to talk about memorable video game endings. So already preemptive spoiler alert. Since I'm going to be talking about video game endings now, I'm very curious to know, and well, now it's just the four of us instead of the seven of us that we had earlier. So my question is, what are your most memorable video game endings? And by memorable, I mean, I don't necessarily mean the ones that you like the best. They could be horrible endings, but they are memorable for that reason. Like they still stick in your brain.
Maybe one of each. One bad, one good.
One bad, one good. Okay, that works. I like that idea. So whoever wants to start, go with you.
I'll start. I will start. As soon as you mentioned video game endings, my brain immediately went to my favorite games, and I went, "You want to know what? Three out of the 4 of them, I wouldn't say like the games are memorable, but their endings weren't as memorable as the experiences themselves, with one exception." And that one exception for me is Hollow Knight. I think the Hollow Knight ending sticks out in my head a lot, all the way from, I don't know if you want to include, like, final boss battles into the endings. But
go on.
But all the way from beating the Hollow Knight, and then, because I actually did Radiant on my first actual ending, because I'm a completionist. I did the other stuff without even realizing what it was going to do, but I got to the final area once you go in and there's nothing there, and then you jump up and then it goes challenge, and you turn to the sun and the sun awakens, and I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna be good. And it was. And the whole ending with all of the siblings going back, and finally, this whole game is about something that is dead that is being forced to live in this kingdom that the king never wanted to end. And this ending is all about everything being able to be laid to rest and finally be at peace.
Yep.
And I just it's not the most like the game, like I could definitely see people going and seeing that ending and still having questions, but on a level it very much says what it's trying to say, which is it's over now. It's over and we can rest. And that hits so damn hard. Anybody else played that game, seen that ending?
I have.
I've not.
Nope, I haven't.
I've only done Shovel Knight. That's the only one I've done out of that series.
What do they're not a series, but yes. What do you think, Brian?
I inadvertently wound up because again, I still didn't complete. I didn't finish Hollow Knight 100%, but without realizing it, I too fought the Hollow Knight and then the Radiance at the end, and yeah, I mean, not only is that in an intense battle to begin with, but yeah, there's sort of a definite finality, which is very nice. I mean, I know we have Silksong coming up.
I was hoping it would be out by now. I was hoping it was going to be out by Christmas earlier this year. I was obviously wrong. COVID's probably part of that. I will wait as long as necessary, but I will be playing that the day it comes out without any doubt.
Yeah, and it was a very, like, the ending itself, it was a very, very solemn sort of ending.
It hits in the emotions in a way that a lot of video game endings don't. It hits different emotions, I guess I should say. It's not a negative ending. It's not one that but it definitely has that bittersweet feel to it, and it, as you said, it's definitely more solemn. Like it hits you in the place that a more. I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought where I was trying to go with that.
That's all right.
This is what happens with my memory issues. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I mean, but suffice it to say, I mean, that Hollow Knight does have an outstanding ending, and it is just chef's kiss. Just absolutely.
So, for my worst ending, I'm going to be incredibly biased. This is not because of the ending itself. It's because of the game. It was when I played through Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2.
I've never played it, so go on.
I loved the first Tactics Advanced. I felt neutral to negative to hating Advance 2 by the time I finished it. I only finished the because I wasn't gonna let the goddamn game beat me.
So you beat it out of spite.
I finished it out of spite. And I was like 80 hours at the end of that. I completed basically everything. And when I saw the credits for that, I basically went, good, now I can burn it. It has nothing to do with how bad the credits were itself. It has to do with by the time I got there, it didn't matter what those credits were because I would not have cared.
Yeah, I kind of have that exact same sentiments for a game that I will be mentioning. So
yeah, so that is entirely based on my own bias. It's not based on how good or bad that ending is. I couldn't tell you how good or bad that ending is. I watched the whole thing, and I've blocked as much of that game as I can out of my memory.
Fair enough.
So I'll end with that. If you haven't played Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, stick with the first one, or play Tactics the original.
Getting so mad you're smacking stuff off your table.
Yeah, this is an intolerable outrage. All right, next.
Very nice. I'll go, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So let's see. For endings that I absolutely love, there are actually, I know I should always think of one, but there are actually two of them that come to mind for me, just because of how the endings are. The gameplay for one of them could have been better, but the endings are absolutely amazing. The first one I'll go for is Kingdom Hearts 2. I loved the ending for that one because we will not mention about like what happens with Kingdom Hearts 3, but for Kingdom Hearts 2, because those of us who still liked it, we didn't know when the next Kingdom Hearts 3 was going to come out, so we figured, hey, it still is a really good ending for what the game had with it, even though I know what other people were like. They were like, there's got to be another one. I personally felt that for Kingdom Hearts 2, the ending that you got with it and stuff was really good for the game and how it went. The other one, and again, I know people's sentiments about this game, Final Fantasy Lightning Returns, to me, was the gameplay was meh and could have been a lot better.
I'm going to jump out. Will someone please just mention in text when I can jump back in? Because I'm going to be playing that game.
All right.
Thank you.
Basically, for Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns, the whole ending of it is that you've basically just defeated the main god, or the so-called main god, who was like screwing around with everything within the world that Final Fantasy 13 is based in, and you're pretty much everybody that was like affected by something like with what happened in 13.2 or 13 itself. They're all basically getting reborn into a new world, and it just Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns just basically wraps everything up so that it finally just kills off that universe and it's done for good. That's why I love the ending, because it's like they're finally wrapping it up. We can finally kill the Final Fantasy 13 universe, and that's why I enjoyed that ending so much for that. All right, we're good on that.
All right, let me get a
yep
message Ronnie here.
Yep.
Do.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. For the one that I hated, the game was great, but the reason why I hated this one is because after all the gameplay you go through, the true ending for this game just makes you feel like I just went through all that crap for this just extremely underwhelming ending, and that was for Drakengard 3. And the reason why I say that is because the Drakengard series and all its like spin-offs and stuff are notorious for having multiple endings.
Hey,
and you have to go through all that stuff.
I heard you like Drakengard and Nier music.
I do.
Well, let me tell you about a game that has a whole raid based on the Nier Automata with its own remixes of the songs. You should play Final Fantasy XIV. They integrated Nier into the plot, and from what I understand, I have not actually done the raid yet, it actually integrates 14 into the Nier Automata world. Like, the games are legitimately connected, and it's not just an ignorable thing. It actually is part of actual plot, and they've said that it will affect Final Fantasy's plot going forward. Final Fantasy XIV's plot going forward.
Wow.
So it's not just a random one-off.
That is interesting to learn, because for those who are not familiar with it, Nier itself is actually one of the alternative endings to Drakengard 2.
Yep.
So that's how Nier came about. And then Nier, I basically say that Nier Automata is a spiritual successor to Nier itself. So that's how like those things are connected. And I love
they tell me, am I wrong? I was pretty sure Nier Automata was directly connected to the first one.
I want to say it is, but I've also heard things saying that it's a spiritual successor to the original Nier, because Nier the game itself that came out in the US is actually not the original one. There's Nier.
I mean, Nier Automata is directly connected to the original Nier, not necessarily the version we got.
Exactly, yeah. Because the one that we got is technically a Nier Gestalt. I want to say it's either Nier Gestalt or technically either Nier Gestalt or Nier Replica, because I know that
it's Nier Gestalt, because we're getting Nier Replica's getting its first thing over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Now with the remake.
That's
I haven't played any of them, but I read up. I have trolled wikis on them once it came to 14, so I'd understand.
Exactly, yeah. And the reason why I hate Drakengard 3's ending so much is because it doesn't really provide that much of closure. It's just like, oh, hey, you did this thing. You did a good job for it, and then it just ends at that. And I'm just like, for all the crap that we went through with all these endings and stuff like that we had to get through, this is what you're giving us for the true ending? And I was like, this is such BS how they did it, and that's why I love the game for Drakengard 3, but I hate the true ending for it so much. It just stood out just like, I did all that work, and this is what the true ending is. This is BS.
All I know about Nier is that in 14, they redesigned the characters so that when you put on the Nier Automata bottom, the characters get a butt.
Yep.
Because the characters in Final Fantasy XIV have notoriously flat butts. So they literally had to create the butt as part of the outfit.
That's interesting.
Booty padding.
Basically.
So, for mine, I'll start with the good ending. I could name a bunch of different games here, but honestly, there's one ending that sold me on a game that, like, I was blown away by A Link Between Worlds ending. Like, it so legit... Good. That ending, for me, like, took Zelda to a different level of storytelling that, for me personally, it hadn't reached before. And that's why, for me, that game is the best Zelda game in the franchise, because of that, like, what they did with the storytelling, compounded upon all the other amazing elements of that game.
It's definitely the best ending in the series, and I personally think it is the best 2D Zelda game. There are a couple 3D ones that I prefer for a couple other reasons, but none of them are as good with the ending.
As long as it's not Ocarina, that's fine.
It's not Ocarina. It's not. I am a huge fan of Twilight Princess. I love the aesthetic of the world, and I really, really dug the story of the champions in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones.
I have yet to play Breath, so that I need to do. But with Twilight Princess, I disliked the wolf mechanics in that game so much that I just really didn't ever connect with the gameplay.
That's
and
totally
the story because of it. But I've always knocked people for liking it. It's just it didn't connect with me at all.
Yeah, I've always felt a little not out of sorts on that because Twilight Princess was not a particularly popular one among the fan base. But yeah, my 3 favorite Zelda games are Breath, Twilight, and Link Between Worlds, and without a doubt, Link Between Worlds is head and shoulders above any of the other 2D games and most of the 3D games.
For me, it's Link Between Worlds, Link's Awakening, and Link to the Past are my top 3.
I'll agree with Link to the Past. I kind of similar with you with Wolf Link. Link's Awakening, both the original, I prefer the remake to the original, but both of them are just too simple for me.
It's fair. I love the combo mechanic in terms of using your items and combining them together to have different abilities. Like, I love the uniqueness of that. That's why I love that game. And plus, like, the music in Link's Awakening is like definitively thematic for like the rest of the franchise. So like it sets so many foundations musically.
The music is, trust me, I would not argue anything. The music is excellent.
So I understand it is pretty simple in comparison to even the Zeldas of its time. So I understand that. But I mean, it was a Game Boy game. So I mean, you can't really like...
Yeah.
You can't really, you're not expecting too much out of a Game Boy game. There's only so much memory. I want to give a special mention, like not to touch too deeply, but Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 have some of the most like moving endings, like for completely different reasons, but like those 2 endings for me were like just mind-blowing in their own personal regards.
I will give you that. Like Metal Gear Solid, on my short list of memorable endings, Metal Gear Solid, just about any of them. Either leave you so dumbfounded or leave you in piles of ugly tears, or both. Or both. I know that by the
piles of dumbfounded tears.
I know that by the end of Metal Gear Solid 3, when you are basically getting the debriefing from Eve or Eva.
Eva, yeah.
And you find out what like the boss's entire role in the game was. I am sitting there watching this play out and watching Naked Snake being confronted with all of the truth that was hidden from him. And I'm just sitting in front of my TV sobbing. Like
the first time I experienced the ending, I actually wasn't playing. It was my buddy who was playing. This was back in college when the game first came out, and like I had never played either of the previous Metal Gear Solid games. I didn't grow up with a PlayStation, so I had no knowledge of the franchise. I was just watching my buddy play this, and we watched that ending, and like without saying a word, we got on. I lived in Philly at the time. We got on the subway, went up to the bar that served underage kids, and drank for like 3 hours straight, and the bartender was like, "What happened to you guys? What's wrong?" And we were just like, "We can't talk about it right now." It was just like that.
Yeah,
the ending for 3 first time.
So you went and got drunk. I was just like full on ugly sobbing. And that was Metal Gear Solid 3 is my favorite of the series. And I really need to play that again. But yeah.
It's worth a replay, that's for sure. If you can get through Snake questioning everything that's going on.
Yeah,
questioning, not figuratively, but actually literally questioning everything that's going on.
Yeah, I know that as in my later, as I got older, I realized that my patience for that style of storytelling, where it's you repeat what the last person just said, but in the form of a question, repeat what you say to provide exposition. Like that type of storytelling just makes you want to throw my PS2 out a window.
In terms of the ending that I didn't like, I'm probably going to get some hate for this, and so feel free to at me, I'll ignore you. FF9. I was really enjoying the game. Like, it's a very iconic title in the franchise. It harkens back to a lot of the older titles. The music's fantastic. I personally love the card game. It's my favorite Final Fantasy minigame. I don't care what anybody says about any other minigame.
Tetramaster's good. Give you that.
Yep, Catcher Master. Yep. But a combination of the fact that Kuja for me felt like Sephiroth Light and like watered down Light, not like Miller Light, not like actual. And then the actual final boss being Necron, which is like something that's like very, very, very lightly alluded to in the story, but like if you're not like picking each word apart with like a fine-tooth comb, you're not going to really know what the hell is going on.
Can I interrupt for one
It's
moment?
just this godlike being that you have to like fight to save the universe from being destroyed because it's bored. So like, and then the whole like Lord of the Rings style like 57 fake endings before the game actually ends, like those things all combined together just made me like want to just like I wanted to finish this game, but now I don't.
I will agree with you on Necron. It continues the fine Final Fantasy tradition of disappointing final boss battles. But I will call you out on you gave me crap about saying that Lightning was a better Cloud, but you say Kuja is a worse Sephiroth.
I mean, I enjoy Final Fantasy IX, but as I mentioned when we did the retrospective a little while earlier, 4 centuries ago this year, that Final Fantasy IX to me was, at the time, when I played it, I was still very, very new to RPGs, and that game was, I call it my first JRPG betrayal. That was the first time I was exposed to that trope of the bait and switch for the final boss. Like, I totally agree with you. Like the game builds up Kuja for the entire game. It builds up Kuja as the final antagonist. Like, this is the guy you're going to be fighting at the end. And then to have this asshole big blue guy show up at the end and, prove to me that you're not worthy of being wiped out. So, yeah, I mean, I totally understand that, Spencer, because when I played that for the first time, I was so mad. Like, I beat the game, after I beat Necron and I watched the ending, I just stormed out, I was pissed.
So you're so mad about that fight, and then like I said, the ending FMVs just don't end. So you're sitting there burbling in this like fuming hatred for this boss fight that is pretty difficult, to be honest with you. Like,
oh yeah, Grand Cross.
Him.
Grand Cross is an annoying move.
Oh,
exactly.
God.
So you get wiped a few times. You're mad because this is a stupid boss, and you have to keep doing it. You just want to end this damn game that's been going on for it's a 4-disc PS1 game. Like, you just want this thing to end, and it's like, okay, let's have 5 different deep fake MFVs that make you think that it's over, and then it's not over, and you're just like, I just want to stop playing.
Now that I had sassed Spencer on the Sephiroth comparison, I can give my actual opinion on this, which is...
To be fair, I've never played any of the 13 games, so I have no opinion on Lightning versus Cloud. I wasn't in that part of the conversation, but,
okay.
How you feel about Kuja versus Sephi is your own deal.
Yeah, okay. But where I was going with that is, the reunion during the ending, I was excellent. But yes, a lot of it is trash. I feel like the reason I don't feel as strongly, and I don't know for you, Spencer, at least for Brian, but by the time I played 9, the bait and switch is old hat for me. Yeah. So I didn't have strong emotions about it. I was disappointed by it because it makes a disappointing final boss battle, but it wasn't like it was the first time it happened to me. At that point, it was an accepted RPG trope for me that it was nice when it didn't happen, but it didn't enrage me anymore.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, that was baby's first betrayal. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I played FF9 a lot later than release, so I was aware of the trope, but that might still have been the first time I actually ever came across it in my own gaming career.
Okay, that makes sense. I think
I'm not sure, because like a lot of my RPG experience before that is like Chrono Trigger, Dragon Warrior, Earthbound. You know, a lot of like Super Nintendo stuff where you didn't really see that at all.
Well, the first one for me was Super Nintendo as well. The first time for me was definitely Final Fantasy IV, because that was one of the earlier RPGs I had after the NES period.
Yeah, see, I played my first experience with 4 was on the PS1 re-release of it, and
Okay.
that was like years after I picked it up to play the Chrono Trigger re-release, and I was so turned off by how bad the load times were on the Chrono Trigger side of it, I never really touched the FF4 for years afterwards, and then it turned out that disc that I bought was broken for the FF4 disc, so I ended up having to buy it for the DS anyways, so it was a mess. Or maybe GBA, I forget.
I have a lot of the disappointments, but for different reasons. I just have a lot of disappointments for the final like fourth of the game, where I wish there was more things with the genomes and the parallels between the genomes and the black mages. And like there's a lot of things that I wish they had expanded on in 9, and the cop-out ending, the cop-out final boss, and then the ending just didn't do any of the things I was hoping they would do. So I'm happy with the reunion between Garnet and Zidane at the end, because that's a nice moment, just because of the characters that are built over the course of it. But yeah, it's not the best ending. Also, seeing little Vivis is nice. That was nice.
It's weird because the game has all these very heavy topics to cover, and then the ending is so fluffy and like doesn't really like have that same gravity that the like story that the game was presenting had.
The game was very bittersweet, and the ending didn't quite have that. I mean, it did a little bit because Vivi was dead, so it had a little bit of it, but not what you would expect from the rest of the game. Yeah, I don't think you should get crap for that. That's a decent choice. My wife would not agree with you, but it's a decent choice.
That's perfectly fair. Alrighty, so I guess it's on me. But before we get to me, my friend Doug, who has been on DLC a number of times before, I know he initially wanted to be on this episode, but time constraints, so he couldn't. He wanted to talk about final bosses, like so I'm not going to go into another separate thing about that, but he wanted me to read a memorable final boss battle that he had, and he actually wrote up a little thing for me that I'm going to read to you right now. So this is from Doug. He wrote this it was an article that he wrote for a Super Nintendo retrospective coffee table book, and he talks about Super Metroid. So is specifically the confrontation with Mother Brain. So, from Doug, quote, "This all culminates with the confrontation with Mother Brain. Samus is on the ropes, and suddenly the whole purpose of her quest, the Metroid hatchling, comes to her aid, only to be killed in front of her, but not before bestowing a gift of the ultimate weapon to finish off the big bad. One can almost feel the game telling the player, 'You've made it this far, it's time to have some real fun.'" I have never played Super Metroid, so...
What? Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Oof. That's an oof. That is a solid oof right there.
As we discussed earlier, there are too many games and we can't have played them all.
Yeah.
That's a fair point, but man, oof. That
know.
That is a classic title. So, without getting too spoilery, basically what happens is the Mother Brain fight is like a 4-parter. And in the last part, the baby Metroid becomes like this like super mega overgrown size Metroid, like bigger than normal Metroid. And it absorbs the Mother Brain's like ultimate attack. And then as Mother Brain's killing the baby Metroid, the baby Metroid is giving Samus energy back, like literal, like her health bar refills because she's been beaten by Mother Brain. And then as the baby Metroid disintegrates from being killed by the Mother Brain, Samus absorbs the plasma beam power, and it's like this it's literally a rainbow beam, and it's like super overpowered and just destroys like everything in your path. Like, you know, you have Mother Brain and then the escape, and it like just mows through it all. It makes the rest of the fight trivial. It's hilarious.
And don't forget that the reason the Metroid jumps in is because Mother Brain you've lost. Mother Brain is about to kill you. She's about to shoot the attack straight into you, and then it rams into her head and starts absorbing her energy. So it's literally saving your life.
Yeah, it's a
You're a
really
good mom.
good game. If you like, if you're into Metroidvanias, obviously you're going to be into an actual Metroid game. So.
This is one of those, it's just like bucket list type games. I'm fully aware of that.
It's
If
the
you-
first. Sorry.
I believe. You have your RetroPie, so
Yeah.
that's probably a moot point. But I was going to say, I believe it's either on the It's definitely on the SNES Mini, and then I have my SNES copy. So
It's
if you
on
ever
the
wanted
Switch
to,
Online, I believe.
is it?
Which
The-
Brian should have.
Which I do have. The problem I find playing the SNES games on the Switch Online, the Switch controller is too big. Do
you mean the Joy-Cons or do you mean the Pro?
the Pro.
I can see that.
I was
feels-
playing Super Mario World the other day, and I'm just like, why am I dying on these levels? Why? And then I play the game on Super Mario World on my RetroPie, and I'm like, oh, there's the muscle memory.
I have a Switch. I have the Joy-Cons, except I have my left Joy-Con has an actual D-pad on it, and it feels just like using like an NES or Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah, so the Switch Pro is too big. Like the Super Nintendo, I'm so used to the Super Nintendo controller on these games, obviously, that I'm just like, oh yeah, that's where the muscle memory is. That's why I'm.
I will say for Super Metroid, I feel like it's, and I'm gonna get crucified for saying this, it is the first of the original Metroid games to hold up to modern times. Not having an available map really hurts the first game, and just a lot of the ease of use stuff that they added into Super Metroid just makes it a much more enjoyable experience to somebody who's used to modern Metroidvanias.
That might be the thing that actually gets me to play Super Metroid, because I've tried playing the original Metroid after playing games like Ori and Sundered and a few other modern Metroidvanias, and and I'm used to the map. I'm used to having an available map, and the original Metroid, you have to rely on your own memory and notes, and that's
you rely on a sheet of grid paper that you have conveniently placed in your lap that you're writing down every single room and what you find and what you don't find.
I grew up with first and second edition D&D. I hated mapping then, and I still hate it to this day. When I
grew up with LOZ1, and you write your own map for that too, because the map in LOZ is equally as irrelevant as it would be to not have a map at all, basically. So, I never had that. Excuse me, I never had that problem, but
so
I played a lot of games. I played a lot of games back in the day that needed you to map, and I did do it when I was a kid, but I did not enjoy it, and I was very happy when that went the way of the dodo with modern gaming. So, like, when I replayed Metroid as part of me replaying a lot of my old games from childhood, and I literally just printed out a goddamn map. I would have preferred an in-game map so I could have explored it more myself, but I wasn't doing that. I printed out one that didn't have any of the items or stuff on it, so I still had to figure out where stuff was. But I was not doing that without a map. I was not doing that with graph paper. Not as an adult, not with the time I have right now.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah, so that I just wanted to...
I did that when I was a kid. I don't need to do it again.
Yep, so yeah, I just wanted to bring up... Doug wanted to have a contribution, so he wrote me a blurb, and there we are.
It's a good choice. Like, that is a really... Especially for a game without dialogue, that was really a moment that makes you feel. You're a good mom.
Yes.
You gotta protect the hatchling.
Yes. All right, so on to me then. So I will reverse. I'll start with my memorable bad ending first, so that I can end on a better note.
You're gonna end on the good note, which is the ending of DLC, so you don't have to do it anymore.
Not yet. Not gonna take that cop out. So this just sticks in my mind because this game is a fighting game, actually. and it was a game that I loved. It was a Genesis game, and the fighting was called Clay Fighter.
Oh my god. Oh, I didn't think I was ever gonna have to think about that game again.
And the reason why I say that this is a memorable bad ending to me, because for like when I owned Clay Fighter, I loved it. I don't know what it was. It was just the whole silly taffy aspect of this game.
Back in the 90s when claymation was like
The
popular
shit, yeah. Like, I loved this game. I just, like, 2 oddball fighting games for the Sega Genesis that I just really, really loved. Clay Fighter and Balls. And so, like, I had spent weeks trying to beat Clay Fighter, because that game has a pretty significant difficulty curve. And, you know, when you finally beat the final boss, who is just N-Boss, you didn't get an ending screen. You just got a thank you for playing.
Was that the first time you'd gotten a thank you for playing ending?
Yeah, like there's not even like a little, not even like, you know, you are the champion, or you've conquered, you know, you're like nothing, not even like Mortal Kombat 1 style ending where it's like you've defeated an end boss, peace is restored. You know, not even that. It's just a black screen with the Clay Fighter logo on the top, and then just the words "Thank you for playing." That's it.
I don't know which one was my first. I know you weren't able to play as many like NES games because stuff with your parents, but I definitely had a couple NES games that ended with a black screen that said congratulations, or a black screen that said thank you for playing, or the one that gets brought up on AVGN because I did own this game, the Ghostbusters game that ended with congratulations.
Yeah, yes, good old congratulations. But yeah, so that is my memorable bad ending, because, and I was so incensed because, I mean, even like Mortal Kombat 1 had the decency to give you like a little text epilogue for what that character did after beating Shang Tsung.
When you said it was a fighting game, I was gonna go a fighting game with a bad ending. Who would have ever guessed?
And that was my first time that I had ever really been seen that as well. Just like black screen, thank you for. But I wanted to know what happened to Blue Suede Goo after beating N-Boss or the Blobs. Just that. Thank you for playing. And
I started out on the 2600, so for me, games didn't even have endings. For some of them, it was just play until you can't beat it anymore.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as an ending.
There was, and I was just like, I was so let down by that, because I was just, it was a challenge for me to beat that game, and I finally did, and I didn't even get a simple, you know, congratulations, or, you know, you're the champion or anything like that. Just a thank you for playing. And that was another one where I'm just like, all right, well, that's a game, and I have never played it since.
I get the feeling, Spencer. I ended up getting a 2600 after my NES because we did not have much money, and you could get a 2600 for pennies at a yard sale once the NES came out because nobody wanted them anymore.
Yeah.
That's where I got
them
my
for pennies before the NES came out. I promise you that.
But point. Oh, we got it. We got it for pennies at a yard sale and a library of games.
I mean, we got ours. I mean, like I was so young when we got it that I don't really even remember when we actually purchased it. But I was born in '83. We got our NES when Mario 3 came out, which would have been '88 Christmas. So like we had a 2600 for like probably a year, I'm guessing. We probably got it for the Christmas before that in '87, and even then, like, you know, the crash had already occurred, so Atari stuff was like toilet paper, basically.
It was funny because I did not get the NES first. My grandmother did. She got an NES because of my 2 uncles that still lived with her, and they played the crap out of Mega Man on it. And watching them play was my first experience with video games.
Well, yeah, because Mega Man 1's basically impossible. So yeah, it's going to take you hours to play.
Yeah.
It really is. I replayed that earlier this year, and I used fucking save states. I only save stated at the beginning of a stage, but I was not going through that shit in Wily's Castle.
Oh, I totally abused the glitch.
I've beaten the game on NES, but the only thing that I did illegitimately was the pause buffer for like the Yellow Devil and a couple of the other boss fights. Because
Yellow Devil's the problem. I cannot beat that boss legitimately. I could not do it as a kid. I tried it as an adult. Couldn't do it as an adult. I'm so glad that glitch exists. I can do the rest of the goddamn game.
Yep.
Yeah, it's possible, but it's so tedious.
Yeah.
It's just tedious, and if you fail, you go so far back. So it's just like you just want to vomit every time.
That was my thing for when I'm playing through these old NES games. I am abusing save states, but I'm not abusing them. I will save state at the beginning of a stage because at this point, these games should not have goddamn lives that send you back to the beginning of the game if you lose 3 times. But yeah, I'm not.
It's just how the times were, you know. Back then, the games were still, you know, that Mega Man 1 was like originally conceptualized as an arcade title. Like that wasn't even supposed to be on a console.
That's why so many of them were so hard, because they were trying to eat quarters, but there weren't quarters anymore.
Nope. Like Mega Man 1 has a points system. It's hilarious.
Yep.
Like, you know, it's so weird to think about games having point systems like that nowadays. But like back then,
I know some people who really love point systems because they play like the arcade shooters and stuff. And like, I've never been able to just play a game wanting to get a high score. Like, I will play a game and I'll beat a game and then I'm done. I don't need to try to beat my old score.
I'm a pinball addict, so that stuff just comes natural to me.
So I mean, it all depends on why you play. Like, everybody has a different reason they play games, and everybody has different things they enjoy about it. I am not a mastery player. I am not somebody who dislikes difficulty, but I don't play a game because it's easy. I've beaten I Want to Be the Guy. I've beaten almost all of Hollow Knight. I just didn't do the 50 boss rush at the end. I can do super difficult things, but that's not what I play games for. It's why I would never be able to be a speedrunner. I don't play to get mastery of a game. I like the story aspects. That's why I'm big on RPGs. I like the exploration aspects and the aesthetics and the music and just fun gameplay. It's why I there's only a couple games I'll ever return to, because I don't need to keep playing a game to death. On the other hand, my father-in-law, he doesn't understand not buying a game and putting over 100 hours into it, because if you aren't playing to master the game, why are you playing it? And he writes guides on games for speedruns. Which I should have brought up when we were doing this, talking about the speedruns, but I was thinking about my brother and not my father-in-law. But we all have different reasons we play, and that's why games are so wonderful, because there's something here for literally everyone.
So now that I have gotten the Clay Fighter, the memorable bad ending out of the way, there's a lot of games that have memorable endings to me. I mean, obviously the ones that are going to stick out in your brain are the ones that produce the most sort of extreme emotional response. We've talked about a number of them here: Metal Gear, Final Fantasy, you know. But I'm gonna pull one off of my short list here that I remember just being like shocked at the end of it, and that is Resident Evil 3.
Yeah.
Like, I know that like a lot of fans sort of crap on Resident Evil 3, but for a long time it was my favorite of the series.
Okay, why would someone crap? I haven't heard that, and I believe you. But why would you crap on Resident Evil 3? It's a good game.
A lot of people take issues with the fact that Resident Evil 3 is, first of all, it's very short. that's where a lot of the crap stems from. Is like after you, like with Resident Evil 2, you get to play 4 scenarios. You get Leon A and B, and then Claire A and B. Resident Evil 3 is much shorter. It's just the Jill playthrough, and
I mean, it feels as long as one of the normal scenarios, like an A scenario or a B scenario.
But
so yes, you don't have the doubling up, but
regardless, I love Resident Evil 3, and at this point I had played the original 1, so I was very familiar with the story and the setting, and the ending of Resident Evil 3 when the decision is made and you see Raccoon City getting blown out of existence.
Had you not played 2 before that?
I had played 2.
Okay, because I feel like it's I definitely see why that would be powerful, but the fact that it blew up from 2 meant that when I played 3, I didn't get as an emotional of a response, because it was cool to see, but I knew it was going to happen.
Well, I mean,
it wasn't.
The second half of Resident Evil 3 takes place after 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, I know.
So, like in my head, when I play this for the first time, the explosion that you see at the end of Resident Evil 2 was, and I thought it was, just the Umbrella facility, the underground Umbrella facility self-destructing.
Yeah, that wasn't the nuke that blew up Raccoon City.
No, I knew that, but I was almost certain, at least when I was younger, I was certain that we were told in 2 that they were going to nuke the city, and that was why we were. So, we don't see the nuke. That's why I said it was cool to see in 3, but it didn't have that thing because I knew it was coming.
I don't know if it ever alluded to it in 2, in the original 2.
Either way, it's been a while since I've played it, but I will be revisiting it again next year.
I only know about the original 2. I haven't played the remake yet.
But just
Same.
I knew that at the end of Resident Evil 2, the Umbrella facility gets blown up, and everything's good. But to actually to have the gravity of the situation, now the federal government knows what has happened in Raccoon City, and all of Umbrella's dealing, and they're like, we can't do anything. This city is a total loss. We're going to just wipe it off the map. And you see the nuke as Jill is escaping, and it's just, at the time when I played it, just a very, very sort of powerful moment, because, this trilogy of games has been set in or near Raccoon City, so you've grown this familiarity to it. You've traveled the streets and the police station, and you've gotten to know the setting very well, and then now it's gone. So, at the time, when I had played this originally, I'm like, well, that's the end. Is that the end of the series? Where do you go from here? And obviously, we figure out where we go later with Code Veronica. We go, to Code Veronica, and then 4 later.
Yeah, we go to an island.
Yes, we go to an island, but that particular ending was just that was like a gut punch ending.
If I feel like there wouldn't have been as much anything negative about 3 if Code Veronica had ended up just being numbered 3 and Resident Evil 3 had been the spin-off title. Because then there wouldn't have been
just put them together. I made that 3. Just put the 2 games together as 2 different scenarios you're playing.
I would have been fine with that. I would have been totally fine with that.
So,
because then maybe we would be getting Code Veronica getting a remake.
Give me that RE4 remake.
So
it's coming as far as leaks keep showing.
Yeah, if the leaks were confirmed by Capcom.
Yeah, I know. But I'm saying it's still coming along was what I was getting at.
Oh yeah. No, I think it was Q2 in 2022 is when they had in that leak for RE4 remake. Yeah. So we've got a ways.
So, but I'm fine. I'm totally fine with RE4 getting a remake. As I said during the podcast, I feel like a modern remake of 4 would make me look more positively on it, because I feel like some of my complaints wouldn't wouldn't be complaints anymore. But I feel like skipping from 3 to 4 means they're just gonna pretend Code Veronica wasn't a thing,
which is kind of sad because that's a significant bit of plot to just wipe out.
They might be trying to build good graces with the public since 3 didn't do so well because they botched it, but they maybe they're thinking like, hey, we'll do 4, that'll sell well no matter how bad it is, and then we can fund Code Veronica next after that with the money we make from 4.
I hope so. I hope
like 2 did well enough to fund 3. But
I hope they're not going to pull I hope they're not going to pull a Kingdom Hearts Days where they're just going to make a video of Code Veronica's story and just go, here you go, you don't have to play the game anymore, just have a video. That's what they did for 2 of the games in their Kingdom Hearts collection. If none of you have ever played it, they literally
played Kingdom Hearts 1 and stopped because Donald Duck made me want to be a murderer.
They took 2 of the games, Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. I don't know. I may be getting the numbers wrong. I just call it days. Even though it actually has my favorite Kingdom Hearts story, because it's a small story about relationships between characters that you care about. And it's not super ridiculously huge over the top. And then Kingdom Hearts Coded, I think. But both of them, they just went, we're going to turn these into movies. That's just what we're going to do. You're not going to have to play these.
I mean, the entire Kingdom Hearts franchise is basically one D&D campaign that just went way off the rails. So
it's not a D&D campaign, get it straight. It is fan fiction. Somebody was a fan of Disney, and they were a fan of Final Fantasy, and they decided to have a big crossover fan fiction with their OCs.
I mean, fair.
Yeah.
So...
After all, their OCs are everyone, and their OC's enemy is also everyone. Is that not fan fiction right there?
That is peak fan fiction.
We've reached peak 90s.
Yes. So there we are. We have all gone around, and here we are, about 4 hours in. Which it's the final episode. I wasn't keeping a time limit or anything like that, but I am starting to get hungry. So
been recording since 8:30 this morning.
Yes, and yeah, dinner needs to happen. So
Ryan, it's been an honor.
And
to be honest.
It's been a great 10 years, and I'm not all that broken up about it ending after 10 years, because we've done a lot of great stuff. We've had a lot of fun. And, I have to thank every single person who has ever done an episode with me, but that would take a while because I've actually gone through 51 individuals have at some point over these last 183 episodes
you couldn't fit your cast into a bus.
Yeah. Just 51 people, and I will name them all in like a Facebook post or something like that, just as thanks. But it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. And maybe I will return to podcasting at a future date. This was something that I came up with in college back in 2011 as a way for me to just talk about video games with friends, because at the time I was dealing with active Crohn's disease and college and really just not playing video games a whole lot. So I just wanted to have a way to just chat about them and just basically keep up. And I feel that, yeah.
I am only halfway joking that I say you should do like a holiday stream next year and just get like 4 or 5 of us on and just shoot the shit and just do like a reunite episode like once a year.
And it is something that I might do. That's not a bad idea. That is absolutely not a bad idea, or some sort of condensed form of DLC, because I mean, I say this is the last episode, but it's like never say never. I never want to really fully shut the door.
The Undertaker has retired 7 times.
Yeah, I don't never really want to fully shut the door, but I'm definitely not doing like a regular like 15 to 25 episode season anymore. It's just It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and
if you ever want someone to chat with on your streams, hit me up and I will gladly jump in and just talk video games with you.
And that might happen. So, I mean, I was just about to say, like, just because this is the last episode of Downloadable Content doesn't mean it's the end of us, talking and being involved with video games. I thought this
was the end of our friendship. I thought, should I not have gotten the cake?
Congratulations, Ronnie. But I mean, seriously, I mean, even though this is the end of Downloadable Content, this is not the end of just talking and hanging out and chatting about video games. I mean, I do a Twitch stream 2 to 3 times a week. You can find me on twitch.tv/eroyvis. And I stream casual game playthroughs of whatever I happen to be playing with at the moment. I will let you know that next year, with Resident Evil turning 25 years old, I'm definitely playing at least the original PlayStation trilogy. I may add 0 and 5 and the remakes to that, but
I'll be playing 0 next year, so I will gladly. I will definitely at least hit you up on Facebook to give you my thoughts.
Oh, you've never played 0?
I have played maybe half of 0 like 3 times, and I believe once my save was corrupted. The next time, like, my system broke, and I think something happened, maybe inventory at work.
Yeah.
Either way, I've started it multiple times. I've never finished it.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'll be doing next year. Spencer, as we mentioned, he does he does mostly speedruns 5 days a week. It's twitch.tv/silentmartyr. And John, who was on earlier, he streams daily. He's twitch.tv/necrovmx. And so just because we're ending here doesn't mean that we're going away forever. You can definitely still find us on Twitch and on Discord, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm very proud that even though we've been doing this for fun, we don't get paid for it. We just love hanging out and just shooting the shit and talking video games. And I have a lot of people to thank for making this enjoyable over the last decade. So really and truly, thank you all, guys, not for being on this podcast, but also just hanging out these last 10 years. It's been a lot of fun.
As Brian said, it's not like we're done shouting about video games into the void. We'll find new places to shout into the void. Please believe us.
I mean, we do have Sprites and Dice, which I think a bunch of us follow and stuff, and they do a lot of things that we sometimes get involved in.
Absolutely. Like Sprites and Dice, it's spritesanddice.com. They also stream a few times a week as well on Twitch.
Which is funny. So I'm surprised that we didn't have at least one of the Sprites and Dice people on the final episode.
Hey, unlike us, which just get together once every couple of months and do some recordings, they actually write articles and they're trying to be an actual serious legit press organization, whereas us schmucks are just yakking on this very fine sophisticated program. I've
considered trying to get involved with what they do, but it looks like so much work.
I mean, they write articles, they stream, so
that was both me being a little trolly, but also entirely legitimate in that I have considered getting involved over there, but I also feel like I don't know if I have the time for what it seems like it would take.
Oh yeah, and that's. They do a lot of fun stuff as well, so they're on Twitch as well. So, well, rather at the risk of this episode becoming a one big Minnesota goodbye, or one long Jewish
record length.
What?
You can't take my record length episode.
I can't. I'm not going to sit here for another 2 hours just to pad. So. I will say, though, that every single episode is going to remain. It's going to remain on the website, dlcpodcast.com. Every episode is going to remain on iTunes, on YouTube, on Stitcher, on Google Podcasts, and also on Spotify. They're not going away anytime soon. I just renewed my domain for the website, so they'll be there for at least a year yet.
Once your domain is out, if you want, I can host them for you because I'm going to be paying for mine regardless.
I might do that, but in the meantime, we have the DLC Discord, which will eventually change over to just if anyone wants to just come in and talk video games, or I'm going to be adding a streaming section where you can either promote your stream or just hop in like a designated streaming audio. I know I spoke to Spencer about that, so that he doesn't have to go making one and maintaining it himself. Because
that'll be extra helpful when I do my board game night for my channel for sure.
So we're not going anywhere, and of course we can't leave without saying thank you to all of you listeners out there, everyone who listens, comments on the Facebooks, have given us suggestions for ideas over the years. It's
Brian assures me that you exist, and I'm not going to argue with him. So thank you.
Yeah, we do.
Congratulations.
we do have some listeners out there. I don't know how many because Apple doesn't give me those stats.
Relevant information.
Apparently, so if we've just
It is irrelevant for you to know who's listening, how many people are listening to your podcast, but we do know that. You just aren't allowed to.
I don't know what the I numbers are. I don't have the secret. I don't have the secret Apple password apparently. So
You need the handshake. The secret handshake.
I handshake.
You've broken the code.
This. So. Alrighty, gentlemen. Thank you again so much for being on this episode and just being with me these last 10 years. All it remains for me to do is to thank Gabe, John, Ronnie, Ron, Spencer, and Ryan for being on this episode with me. Thank you all so very much. Until we see each other again, guys, I am Brian French. Have a good one, everybody.